my first question, let's get into a time capsule and go back to the year 1990. Take me back to your childhood, growing up in Sankuwasabha, growing up in your village. What was daily life like for you in the village? What were some of the challenges you faced? And what are some of the memories that stand out to you, both the good memories and the difficult ones?
Hmm. I was born in the eastern part of Nepal, district called Sankuwasabha. And my village would specifically be Chiraite, which is, I would say, approximately 18 to 19 hours bus ride back then.
Okay.
Or now it would be 35-minute flight and another 3-hour approximately drive to my home. I was born to a single mother in a very, I would say, decently poor family because poverty was everywhere. So I wouldn't necessarily say my family was the poorest because we came from a family that had abundant land that we could farm. But my mom was separated from my in-laws or her in-laws' family because her husband was not around. And so she was separated, pushed out of the main family. And I was born in the separated house, which was approximately around 30 to 45 minutes walk from the main house. So being born into a rather isolated house in a poor family to a single mother meant a lot of things were very different for me, for my mom, and eventually my sister and my younger brother. Now, I think life back then was filled with a lot of interesting prospects. I would say, being born into a family in a rural area meant, you only dreamt of a certain limited kind of professions. And as a kid, we were direct away plunged into farming. That was the first thing we learned. The second thing we definitely learned was, how you built a family. Then eventually came about, the eventual aspect of going abroad and working as a laborer in the Gulf or Malaysia, all of the countries where Nepal supplies a lot of labor. So the most vivid memory I have of me, my mom, in our house would be, so we didn't have enough food to eat, and we never ate white rice. And this is something I've not told a lot, but we used to eat a lot of corn rice, so milled corn. That's what our staple diet was. And white rice was only when guests came or once a year during the festive season. That's what we ate. And the most vivid thing that I ever remember is I used to wish that guests would come to my house often so that we could eat white rice. But despite that being the most vivid one, I would definitely say, looking back now, despite we didn't not having a lot of food to eat, I would say we were pretty well fed. My mom ensured that the children were fed first, and then she eventually took the brunt of not having enough to eat. We worked our ass off. As a 5-year-old, I would have to wake up, help in chores, but not really do a lot of farm work. And then, my mom would go out to collect wood, fodder. She would ensure that all animals are taken care of. And as a 5-6-year-old, I would just go around helping her where I could. The other things is, one other vivid memory would be whenever a plane passed by our skies, we would stop like it's something, it's supernatural, right?
Right.
So everybody in the village, everybody around the villages would stop and look at the plane. And the other things is, so all of my family, including my uncles, my aunt, I'd say not my aunt, but my uncles, my cousins, they all went abroad to work as a laborer. I was a cheap laborer in Dubai, Saudi, Malaysia. My father actually went off to Saudi. And interestingly, when they came back, they would come back with like the big tapes, the radios, the massive ones.
Yeah.
They would carry that and come back with a lot of music, like lots of bags. And I remember as a 6-year-old thinking that's what I really wanted to do in life, which was go and make a lot of money and come back with the bags and the tape. Sometimes, as time evolved by, people would bring TVs and all of that. But things turned out to be sort of very different. There were schools, but schools were not very close to home. We had to make longer walks to get to the nearest school. My walk was always an average of 2.5 hours to the school and 2.5 hours back. And my mom was the reason that I would have to attend a school.
She used to drag you by the ear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that I still now, right? So I was not a kid who loved education growing up, because I felt like my mom needed me at home, and me going to school was not very fun, because it wasn't really fun because the teachers were not as effective. They were not as fun. They didn't teach the way you'd want to encourage a child to come to school, right?
Sure.
We would be dragged to the school. I don't even remember anything that I studied back then, even as a 7-year-old, right? I don't remember my teachers that much. But the thing that I always vividly thought of was my surrounding, my life was all about getting enough food on the table, helping out in the farm, ensuring that my mom was looked after. I mean, as a kid, that's everything, because she was everything to me, right? And so instead of going to school, I always wanted to be with her at home, supporting her as much as I could. Little did I know that she had a different plan, which is I had to go to school. So 2.5 hours every day. That was her morning ritual. And my morning ritual was not to get to school. So her ritual was to get me to school. My desire was not to get to the school. So both of the clashes led to quite a lot of drama along the way. And so even today, even to date, like, the villagers that fell along the path to the school remember me vividly, which is you were that kid who pulled your mom's hair because she carried you on her shoulders to school, that you didn't want to go. And then they would remember how along the way during the rainy season I would be dragged through the mud and all of that. So that's probably my village. And I think I was very I wouldn't say I was very innovative back then, but I was filled with a lot of ideas. I loved opening up the radios. So my mom had 2 to 3 radios, and my job was to open it up and try to understand it as much as I could. Not that I understood it, I just opened it up and didn't know how to put it back on. And so as a curious kid, I would look to see possibilities to build, for example, playing stuff. We were not provided with any sort of, toys. Our toys were all, either mud made, or you played in the trees. And I remember you close to my home, like 5 minutes away from my home, there used to be this big bush, and me and my friends would go in there and act like the thing flying above was the thing we were sitting on. And so we would make a lot of noise. We'd make slides out of wood. And it was pretty economical. So my mom would send me to cut grass for the goats and the cows. Not a lot of times, but whenever she couldn't, she would send me. And, being the kid I was, I used to have this plank of wood that was very, very well designed. And, it acted like a slide that would go from, so we lived in a hill. So that means that from the top, you could go sliding all the way down. And so whenever my mom sent me out to, get grass or any sort of feed for the animals, I would make sure my friends did it for me in return for the trip on the toy, right? So those
work smart, not hard.
And honestly, I think that was that from an early age. I realized that my mom worked too hard, and she needed a lot of support. Sure. And but little did I know that I wouldn't necessarily be with her throughout.